although BMW started this squashed SUV trend with the X6 and Mercedes-Benz followed and nearly every Audi followed. It's a good episode, this one. So not that long ago, on an episode of Drive TV, we talked about coupe SUVs and how the likes of the BMW X6 and Mercedes and Porsche basically owned that slice of the market. And there was no way to get yourself behind the wheel of a squashed wagon for less than $100,000. Well, that is, until now. This is the Haval H6 GT, a medium-sized family SUV with coupe styling that's priced from under $50,000. What's it like? Well, let's find out. Based on the successful Haval H6 SUV, the Haval H6 GT is priced from $40,990 drive away for the front-wheel drive GT Luxe and from $46,490 for the all-wheel drive GT Ultra. Both variants feature the same 150 kilowatt, 320 newton metre, 2-litre turbocharged 4-cylinder petrol engine and 7-speed dual-clutch transmission. Fuel consumption is claimed at 7.5 litres per 100 kilometres for the two-wheel drive and at 8.4 litres per 100 kilometres for the all-wheel drive. Our car is the range-topping Ultra all-wheel drive in optional Atlantis blue metallic paint, although some of the other footage will show the Ultra in crayon grey metallic paint. So while underneath the H6 GT is exactly the same as the regular H6 wagon, on the outside, kind of everything is different, and it's not just the coupe styling. Up front here you can see you've got a whole new front end. There's similar headlamps that you'll get on the wagon, but the grille and everything is completely new for the GT. Even this snazzy fake carbon fibre panel. You've got these dark over fenders that run the length of the car that again you don't get on the wagon, and it leads through to a really interesting point a bit further down the car. All right, now check this out. Here on your rear door is a little winglet. Now this is an aerodynamic aid that's often referred to as a conversation starter because it does absolutely nothing other than get people to say, what is that and what does it do? Now it is just one part of the aerodynamic accessories that you'll find on the H6 GT, like the 2-stack rear wing. None of this stuff does anything to help the car's aerodynamic profile. It's not going to improve its Nürburgring lap time, and it certainly won't help you find a car park at Woolies. But it does make the style of the H6 GT a little bit more interesting. Now, if you think you've seen rear-end styling like this before, you're not actually that far wrong. The car we used in that episode of Drive TV was the Porsche Cayenne Turbo GT, and it features a high-mount rear spoiler, a boot lid spoiler, elements of carbon fibre, and even has an LED light strip at the rear. What's even funnier is, although this car is in Atlantis blue, one of the other 4 colours that the Haval H6 GT comes in is called crayon grey, just like the Porsche. So if you like your internet memes, consider this, the Porsche Cayenne Turbo GT you already have at home. Now the boot in the H6 GT is only minorly compromised due to the sloping back, but it isn't that big to begin with. Only 392 litres like this because it's quite a high floor and quite a shallow depth of the boot. You can fold the seats down 60-40 to 1390 litres if you want, and there is a space saver spare under the floor. But if overall volume is something that you are after, maybe look at some other options in this segment because this is not the biggest boot. Will it handle your shopping and other day-to-day uses? Yes, it will. And of course, on the top spec, this tailgate is powered. What the H6 GT doesn't have in overall cargo space, it makes up for, more importantly, in rear passenger space. It's enormous back here. So for context, I am 6'3", I'm nearly 50, I've had a big breakfast, so you know, I'm not exactly a lean bean back here. That seat is in my driving position, and I have a stack of leg room and toe room and knee room and head room. It's a pretty comfy bench. There are air vents, there are USB point chargers. There's an armrest with cup holders, and for a coupe styled SUV, I am honestly surprised at just how much room there is back here. You're not feeling compromised by the sloping tailgate. You're not feeling that you're in a dark hole, and I'm certainly not feeling cramped. So if you are after a car that has immense rear passenger space, this is really, really impressive. Let's jump up front. Well, up here, the front of the H6 GT is basically the same as in the regular H6. Now, this being the range-topping version means we get a 12.3-inch infotainment screen, which I'll run through in a minute. But the things to really note here, Good seats, good support. You do get unique GT badging on these, but one of the things that we've been impressed with the regular H6 as well as here in the GT is just how much storage you get. You've got 2 cup holders, a key holder, a charge pad all here. You've got a pretty deep center console bin here. Underneath the center console, there's another storage tray with USB ports on both driver and passenger side, with the one on the passenger side including a little pathway where you can poke a cable up through to the tray here. Now I know that's the charging tray for wireless charging, but if you are using Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, you still need to tether your phone. So you can poke a cable up here and have just the end poking out. So no more messy cables around the car. Keep your phone plugged in, really easy to use. And I have to say, in terms of that practicality of always having somewhere to put your stuff, this is a really good layout. Now, in terms of other functionality up here, you do have a rotary gear shifter that does take a bit of getting used to, but I'll explain that when we're on the move. An electric handbrake, obviously a glove box, your controls for the sunroof here, and even a sunglasses holder, which always comes in handy, except for me. I put my sunglasses in there and then change cars, and I've lost so many pairs of sunglasses, it's not funny, but that's for another day. Up here in front of the wheel, you've got, again, a digital instrument cluster as well as a head-up display. So you've got a real wealth of information as well as a wealth of storage that makes the H6 GT a pretty nice place to spend time. Now, in terms of infotainment, why don't we have a look at what you get here in a bit more detail. So the infotainment system in the H6 GT, in the top of the range model here, you get the 12.3-inch cluster, and that's the one we're going to talk through today because the features are basically carried across. It's just the display looks a little bit different. And I want to say there are 2 things. It's a pros and cons kind of system. It looks great. It's reasonably well featured, and you've got some pretty cool stuff here, but you've also got a few little frustrations that, look, once you've owned this car and you've driven for a while, you'll probably get used to, but I'll show you where there's a few things that probably could be done better, because if you have a look, the console itself is very minimalistic when it comes to buttons. You've got your screen, and then you've got a few of the air conditioning controls here to turn the system on and off, to put your rear and front demisters on, and to turn off the parking system as well as your hazard lights, but that's it. What that means is that things like finding your heated seats, for example, you need to go through here into the car settings, look for seats, and then turn them on, all while you're driving. Now, it's not the most ideal way to do things, but it's not the only system or part of the system that works this way. Again, from the home screen, if you want to go into sport mode, you've got to swipe across, but even then you've got to find the right bit to swipe across. You've then got your drive mode screen. You can then tap on sport mode to go on. The car flashes its hazard lights and you get a slightly remapped throttle sensitivity there for driving. It just revs things out. You do notice a slightly different bass note to the exhaust when you're in sport mode, but it goes from, say, 1 to 2. Like, it's a minor difference, but anyway. But having this screen or having these functions as part of the infotainment screen, and we can even go into race mode. Now there you go, you might have heard the pitch change there. This is all a little bit incongruous while you're on the move. To have a button to change between drive modes or to turn your heated seat on is what most other cars do, because it is a lot more intuitive to do while you're on the move. And it is just an area where this system, while it is quite impressive, falls down. But let's have a look at some of the good stuff. You do have a full featured menu, and you get some pretty cool stuff in here as well. Like, we're on the standard, where are we? If I go to the menu, we're on the standard display mode here. If we go into the system settings, as you can see, it's not always the fastest to react. There we go. We are on our Spacefold theme. We're on our race theme is where we are now. We will go to the foreign space, and we're applying our theme. And what this means is it gets some really weird astro kind of mode. And if you have a look at the main screen, we get like a planet surrounded by rocky debris. And over here on the instrument cluster, you get a constantly rotating globe. Don't know what that means, but it's kind of cool. It's a little bit interesting, and it certainly is like the elements on the outside of the H6. It's a conversation starter, and what's wrong with that? But another thing to call out, you've got AM/FM radio, but no DAB. You do have support for Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and the Apple CarPlay integration, it is full screen, it looks really, really slick, and to be honest, it's probably the interface that you'll find you use more often. However, it means that you've got yet another step to go out of Apple CarPlay into the car's menu to turn on or off your heated seats. Now, worth mentioning as well, you've got a swipe down from the top here to get through some of the other functions as well. So there is, to be able to turn the head-up display on to check if your wireless charging is working. You can change the steering weighting. You can also change the brightness of the screen. So there's a lot to play with in here. You can change the background pictures. I don't know who would actually do that, but it's there if you want to. So there's a lot to play with, but it's not the best implementation that we have seen. It sort of reminds you that where the H6 is positioned in the market, it may look pretty snazzy and fancy on the outside, but it is still got a little way to go. And if we were to see some improvement in the software for this operating system, it would make the H6, whether it's the GT or the regular wagon, it'll really move it up in the market. Let's take a quick look at the instrument cluster. Now, the other screen in the H6 GT is the fully digital instrument cluster, and this is the same as you'll find in the regular H6. So if you are familiar with that car, you'll be familiar with some of the features here. Now, what you get as a starter on the right-hand pane is your multimodal, and if you tap the home button on the steering wheel, you get a little menu that you can choose from audio, from navigation, which is not native, by the way. It requires your Apple CarPlay or Android Auto to be in action. You've got any system warnings. You've got a settings screen there that can change what data you see. You can reset your trip meter. You can see when your next service is due. You've of course got your trip data, and you can cycle through an A and a B trip meter here and go back. So all very simple. But if you change the car into race mode, now I know I said before when you change to sport mode it doesn't make anything different. Race mode, however, you get a completely different exhaust note that is actually kind of cool, but you get a unique instrument cluster here that gives you a tachometer and a little bit more performance oriented. So if you are doing those laps of the Nürburgring to test out the aerodynamic aids on the side of the car, then maybe this is the setting you want. We're going to go back to normal mode because, quite honest, that is where it is. And it is weird that when you put it into sport mode, it flashes its hazard lights as if to warn you and the rest of the world that you're doing something crazy. But probably the biggest call out here is the center of this display, which shows you, and obviously we're in a car park so we can't really demonstrate, but it shows you the contextual driver assistance display. And this is the sort of thing we see in Mercedes-Benz and in BMW and in Tesla. And now you've got it in a Haval. And what's more, it's here in the cluster as well as in the head-up display. And what that does is on a tour, if you've got your adaptive cruise control on, it will show you the cars around you. It will show you where there's a car in the other lane, where there's a car in front. And it's just part of the advanced software that we're starting to see filter down onto, I guess, more mainstream vehicles like the Haval, which is a pretty impressive feature to be seeing at this level. So definitely a car that is geared well for touring, with some technology that is actually really, really, I don't want to say cutting edge, but it's the high end of what's available on the high end of the market on a car like this. Pretty impressive for a car that is, essentially a well-valued around town performer. Now, speaking of which, let's go for a drive and see how well the H6 GT handles a bit of around town, and if we do move it back into race mode, see what it's like on a country drive. So look, as discussed, every single H6 GT currently runs the same turbocharged 2-litre 4-cylinder across the range. It's just a choice whether you have all or two-wheel drive. So the 150 kilowatts and 320 newton meters out of this motor, it's not bad. It's certainly enough for around town. Where we do find, and where we have found with the rest of the H6 range, is the fuel consumption. So the quoted figures are in the sort of the mid to high 8s. We have seen higher than that, and it is something that we're finding with some of the engines out of China. They just don't quite get the level of efficiency that we see certainly out of Europe, and even to a point out of the cars that we're seeing from Korea and Japan. And it is an area that we'd really like to see the likes of Haval start to improve. So once you've come to terms with the power out of this thing, you will realise that the sporty demeanour on the outside, and even that really cool exhaust note that you get from race mode, this is not a sports performer. And I think it's a choice that you can make as a
medium-sized SUV buyer to have a car that is a little bit different, and it basically is a style statement far more than it is a performance statement. And you know what? That's okay.
The H6 GT features a 7-speed dual-clutch automatic transmission, which is really solid when touring and even while driving around town. But when accelerating away from lights or even needing kick-down performance, it's perhaps a bit too eager when you want it to be smooth and too relaxed when you want it to be responsive.
Now, ride quality is pretty good. It's erring very much more to the comfort than the performance side of things. You can feel it sort of move around. We're just on urban streets here, but that means we're dealing with some imperfections in the tarmac and a few bumps and bits and pieces. You can feel everything, but the car soaks them up reasonably well. There's certainly not a jarring sense of moving around. It's not too harsh or anything like that, and it is far more a cushier ride. And you would have heard that beep, beep, beep that always comes in right in the middle of a piece to camera. That is the active safety on this car, of which there are myriad systems, and it's good or bad. You can obviously go through the menus and turn them off to your liking. But what it means is you've got active lane departure here. It's just constantly reminding you if you're moving across a white line because of roadworks or what have you. You've got a constant distance reminder. You've got speed limit reminders, speed limit and speed sign recognition. So it really is a full suite of technology. And there's even some pretty cool ones that, you know, arguably whether they're that useful. The car has a automatic reverse memory assistant. Now, you would have seen this when we demonstrated it in the BMW 3 Series. It remembers the last 50 meters that you've traveled. The H6 GT can do a very similar thing, but it does it so slowly. Like, it is at a walking pace to be nice and safe, but it's at a walking pace if you were walking basically standing still. So we tried it in the car park before and wanted to show you on the film, but you really haven't got that long in your day to watch us take 10 minutes to move between two spaces. But it is a bit of a testament to the level of technology that you get on this car. Stuff that you only dreamed of at the high end of the market is now available on a far more consumer relevant platform in the H6, and that's a good thing. Now, one of the benefits of this engine, and I've just dropped the car into race mode as our little bit of stretch of tarmac here has opened up. The peak amount of torque is available from just 1500 RPM in this thing, which means it's pretty lurchy down low, but basically above that, you don't really get much. So we're here, you can hear it burbling away. It's in race mode. We're sitting at around 3000 RPM. I accelerate and it thinks about it and doesn't really do anything. So once again, the performance side of the GT is very much just there for a little bit of fun. And I think go in knowing that and go in expecting that, and you'll feel certainly not disappointed by the car, but you'll at least set your boundaries in line with where the car is, and it's probably the right way to look at it, because it's actually kind of funny. Like, it sounds really angry, and yet I accelerate and it just literally doesn't do anything because it's not in the right gear and it's not doing it. And it's not because there's a problem with the car, it's just that it's not designed to do this, and that bimodal exhaust is there for theatrics rather than action. So yes, it is an interesting thing, and it certainly makes the car a little bit more fun, but it doesn't improve its performance and dynamic prowess one iota. That sounds kind of cool though. So what you find in the car's performance setting, even in urban streets, it feels a bit lurchy down low. It sounds kind of cool, but it's never quite where you want it. The transmission is very much geared to be driving in a more relaxed fashion. So if we jump out of this and go back to normal mode, the H6 GT again feels like a really well-mannered and well-behaved, and it's quite interesting the change in the cabin ambience now that we've lost that performance timbre of the exhaust. You do have a very usable, quite likable daily urban runner in this car, and I think one of the benefits that you find, you've chosen the style option, you've chosen the fun option, but you're not making any compromises here. We've still got pretty solid rear visibility out the rear window, and it is smaller than what you get in the wagon, but it's still very easy to drive. As we saw, you don't compromise rear headroom. You're not really changing the boot space. The Haval wagon's not the biggest thing going around, so it isn't the most spacious boot, but it certainly is enough for day to day. And what you find with choosing this car over that one is you just have something that's, well, a little bit more interesting and perhaps a bit more fun. Even stopped filming, we've had people come up and ask, what is it? And you know, where do you get one and what is it priced? And you explain where this car is positioned, and you get that real surprise and delight from people who don't realize that you can get a car of this kind of, I guess, interesting style for what is an affordable price point. So back now, car in its relaxed mode, driving around urban streets as this car will want to do. And I know that if I had family in the back, they would have plenty of space. I know that I've got Apple CarPlay now running on this large media screen, and it works really well. I get how the car's technology features and driver assistance features work, and I've worked out which ones to turn off, especially while filming, that suit what I want to do. So in terms of the level of configurability and the level of functionality that is offered on this car out of the box, it certainly is quite impressive. For a longer drive, for a longer tour, we'd really like to see what the fuel economy is like outside of town, and obviously over time we'll have a bit more of a chance to do that. But that's an area where I really would like to see Haval put a little bit more effort into, and also the body control. As we've said, it errs on the comfort side of things, but on bigger bumps, you find that the car doesn't settle quite as quickly enough as you'd like. It just needs a little bit of a tune to that suspension damping to really make it a real winner in that segment. It certainly doesn't make it a bad car right now. And I think for a lot of buyers who want comfort, who want a bit of style, who want all of these features, the H6 GT, it ticks an awful lot of boxes. We've kind of got to a really interesting place in the automotive scene where you can buy a car that is kind of whatever you want it to be. Cars like the BMW X6 exist for one key reason: a style choice. There's no difference over what a regular X5 offers, you just get a slightly different look. And the H6 GT is exactly the same. There are no compromises made here over the H6 wagon. It's the same underneath, you get the same technology, you get the same huge interior passenger space, you get the same compromised boot, but you get it in a format that suits your style and your preference. And for that, I think this car needs to be applauded. It is not vastly different, it is not dynamically amazing, it is a good value-packed urban running family SUV, but it's also a kind of cool looking one.
In summary, what we liked most about the Haval H6 GT is that huge amount of rear passenger space, which makes it a really good option for families. Plus there's a stack of driver assistance technology and other gizmos that are pleasantly surprising to find on a car at this price point. And it does look cool. It really is a fun and stylish option for buyers. But what we didn't like so much is the layout of some of the functions within the infotainment system. They're a little too fiddly to get around while on the move. The H6 GT is very much a case of sporty see but not sporty do. The car's suspension is a little underdamped and while comfortable, isn't as well mannered as it really should be. And of course that transmission, it just really needs a software tune to make the car smoother off the line and a little more predictive when needing to overtake.
What that means for buyers is that you can have a car that kind of suits your taste. And if the H6 GT is perhaps the first of many to follow, it makes the next number of years certainly exciting ones, because I can tell you what, the regular H6 comes in a hybrid version, and because the rest of the car is the same, you can bet they'll offer that in this one as well. Now, if you've got any more questions about the Haval H6 GT or the rest of the Haval range, head on over to Drive.com.au. We've got a full detailed review of this car, as well as great other features and news on the Haval lineup, as well as every other SUV and other car in the market. If you've enjoyed this clip and want to see more, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, make sure you tap the bell icon so you receive a notification every time we publish a new video. And of course, if you have any questions, hit us up in the comments below. And we'll see you next time for a drive.